Thank you. Thank you so much.
We are really happy that you could make it with us today.
Yeah, I'm also happy. Thank you.
So you can have a seat there, and we can have. I think we have many questions to ask. So
Yeah, you can.
I hope you're comfortable.
Yeah, I'm absolutely comfortable. It's very difficult to make me uncomfortable. I'm such an animal. Yeah, please.
sir has written so many books, right? You have already
I have read Random and Pentacles.
What did you feel about the books?
They were quite good. I really like them while reading. I usually read in my free time after studies. So I it was a good time going on my reading for free books.
Thank you. Yeah. If you have any questions, you can ask me.
How how far is the journey to now? How good it is?
You see, I don't measure anything as good or bad. Uh, you see, a writer can uh, sleep well if he has written what he wants to write, and he doesn't care whether people read it or not. But if people read it and it makes a difference in their lives, uh, definitely he is happy about it. So I started writing very seriously from 2007. So 2007 and 2000, between 2007 and 2009, I had readied the manuscript for Pentacles and Frosted Glass. Then my search started for a publisher, which was frankly very difficult because I didn't want to self publish any book. When I finally got a publisher, after a lot of struggle, I would say, approximately 9 to 10 months of battle, what I ultimately got was an agreement to publish a book, but of course, something happened in me. I was not too confident to publish the entire manuscript. So, what I did was I broke up the entire manuscript into Pentacles, what was published in Pentacles, and what was later published in Frosted Glass. So I thought of if Pentacles becomes some kind of a success, then definitely I hope I hoped that my publisher would be uh, willing to publish Frosted Glass. You see, the problem with me is I also mix up a lot of genres in writing a book. I write short stories, long short stories, lot of prose in verse, lot of verse in prose. So there is a saying among publishers that they don't like poetry because poetry doesn't sell. So I said one of the ways to sell poetry is punch it with some kind of a prose. So Pentacles became a success, and then Frosted Glass. Then slowly the books came about, and after 2012 there was a lull. I started writing 2012, from 2012 to 2018. Although I had a deadline to publish a book in 2016, but I couldn't meet that deadline. Finally, I submitted my manuscript in September 2018. And finally, the book Random Subterranean Mosaic got published in 2019. It has already become a bestseller. Yeah, so Random is doing very good. It's also once again mix and match of lot of genres. Uh, Short shorts, poetry, opinion, a lot of political writing, and then of course conversation set pieces. So yeah, I mean, you see, I'm not so uh, worried about making it to the top list. I am wanting to cut my eyes to niche readers, young people who like this kind of work, and if it cuts size, it's good. It feels good. As far as I am concerned, it feels good. On December 6th, the play Abyss is going to be staged in Hotel JW Marriott in Kolkata, where the Telegraph T2 is the media partner, and there are many associate partners. JW Marriott itself is one of the partners. So it's going to be a huge event, much bigger than what I am or what I am capable of. So I think that event should be good. So, in a sense, you sort of feel inside you that you have arrived. But how intense is your arrival, you know, after 10 years, you see. Yeah. Any other question? Yeah, yeah.
So you just said that publishers don't like publishing poetry books because they don't sell much. And it's like I love writing poems, and I consider myself more as a poet than a story writer. Like as like I am more of a poet than a short story writer or a story writer. So, sir, I have to ask you, considering your books are so well known between young people like us. So, what should I do to, publish my poetry book, or how can I write poems so people, can connect with me, my words, my feelings.
I must tell you one thing that I have been trying to tell publishers, that you must understand that writers don't choose a form. Everything that comes to their mind comes in a form, either in a poem or a novella or a short story or a long short story or a novel or a play. So if things are coming to your mind in the form of a poem, you should keep on writing poems, and you should try to be authentic. You should be true to yourself, and I'm telling you, someday you will find a publisher. If your work is good, read it out to your close friends. But what I keep on saying is, you see, after you write any piece, a poem or a play or any kind of a short story, you end up feeling that you have written the best piece in the world. Everybody feels like that. But you must understand that you should give it some gestation time so that the work goes out of your bloodstream. That is when you should come out with that piece of work, because you should distance yourself from your piece of work. Until and unless you are able to distance yourself from your piece of work, you will not be judging your work properly. That's my feeling. So, uh, be steadfast as far as writing poems is concerned. But I'm saying be very careful in not being too much of what I should say, find expectation that you would be able to publish it. You see, don't put so much of expectation in your work. A writer has to write, an author has to write.
Yes, sir.
You see, the word author comes from the Latin word auteur, An auteur means to suffer. To suffer. It author, there is a difference between a writer and an author. A writer writes, but an author suffers and writes. So if an author doesn't suffer and write, then there is no meaning in writing.
So, what is your thought process while writing? The conflicts and
Yeah, you see, can you, can you, do you know how your thoughts come to your mind? You see, Nietzsche said a very beautiful thing. Thoughts come, you don't control your thoughts. You don't think that I'm going to think this way now. It doesn't happen this way. So you basically, what you try to do is, thoughts come, and of course, if a thought appeals to you in a manner that you will write a book, you start writing it. And as I was telling in the morning, I have written a lot of incomplete works also, but people have not understood it. They felt that it was a complete piece of work, but for me it was an incomplete piece of work. So me and my publisher, what we did was, we basically thought that I am dead after this work. So because I am a great writer, they are publishing an incomplete work in the guise of a complete work. So let's check if the audience can understand whether it's a complete or an incomplete work. But incomplete work also sells, because every work is a piece in building. Every work is a piece in building. You can't say, I'll give you the greatest novel written in the history of literature is Anna Karenina. Anna Karenina stopped around 60 to 70 pages before the story was written. But the last 50-60 pages, Tolstoy wrote, he wrote in his diary, because he wanted to say certain things as an author about parenting. So he actually wrote the last 50-60 pages. 60, or it could be 75 pages also. I'm saying the last bit was an extension of the book. It could have ended even 75 pages before that, after Anna commits suicide. But he keeps on writing the book. So we wouldn't have felt the book as incomplete if the book was stopped 75 pages before. Yet Tolstoy was convinced that he should write 75 pages more. So what is complete to you may be incomplete to somebody else, and what is incomplete to you could be complete to somebody else. So this is very important. So you can't control your thoughts. To say summarily, you can't control your thoughts.
how many drafts you draft while writing?
Yeah, there have been lot of drafts. You see, the point I answered to his question was that you have to allow the work to go outside your system. That's very important. While you work towards making the work move outside your system, what you are doing is making corrections to your work. And as you correct your work aesthetically, thought-wise, more and more, what you end up doing is you are moving out of the work. The work is moving out of your bloodstream. And that's when you can look at your work as somebody else's work. And that's when you should be able to go to somebody and read out your piece of work. Because then you won't cry if somebody says, I don't like your work. Because then maybe you will understand why he or she is not liking your piece of work. So there are many drafts. Now each book has many kinds of drafts. You see, I mean, Frosted Glass could be 10 to 15 drafts. At my level, once the chief editor was working on it, there were 2 to 3 drafts. Certain books had less number of drafts. Abyss had very less number of drafts. Pentacles as a book had less number of drafts. But Random once again had many drafts, many drafts. Because the book itself was so unconventional.
You write down the drafts, like write down the novel by your hand.
Normally what I do is, once I am planning, I give a kind of a, I give a kind of a rough sequencing of the book. I write down, and there is no set time for me to write. I am writing every time, or I am writing no time. So if I am just feeling like writing after I come back from the gym, where I don't know whether I look like I do gym or not, but I'm telling you frankly, I do gym, okay, and I don't cheat on gymming, and even today I gymmed, all right. So if I just feel like writing a piece of paragraph after coming from back from gym, I will write it. Or even in office, if I'm involved in some kind of a meeting and I just feel like writing, I'll end up the meeting and I'll write it. So I write it every time, yeah. Yeah. Can you be a bit louder?
So you just mentioned in the beginning that you have this, like you mix genres when you write. So does it ever get like confusing when you are like skipping or like mixing the different genres? Do you ever get like, suppose you're writing a poetry and then you skip to a prose, like does it ever get difficult?
It doesn't get difficult for me because the things come to my mind in that manner. You see, normally I don't write poems in rhyme or strictly by meter. So my poems are mostly narrative, free verse, except a few poems which are not. I don't write reflective poetry. Every time I'm telling a story, even within a poem I'm telling a story. I'm interested in telling stories, all right. So basically if the story comes in the form of a poem or a prosaic story, so to say, so in my writing you will find that there is lot of prose in poems and poems in prose. Except my most prosaic book is The Abyss, which is full of conversations, and in Random, chapter 87, which is the incomplete conversation set pieces, which is absolutely prosaic, because you and I, if I talk, we are not going to say poems. We are going to talk absolutely prosaic. So it's absolutely prosaic. These two pieces of writings are absolutely prosaic.
So what I understand with poem is it's a whole story in a page. This is what I get from books. Like a poem and stuff, you get a whole story in a page on. So why most of people don't like reading poems rather than reading books, like the friction, non-fiction and story.
No, I think it is not right to say that people don't love reading poems, but it's something to do with the publishers. You see, the mindset with the publishers. You see, there are a lot of free sites on the internet where there are poems by classical authors, and I find lot of young people going to those sites and reading the poems. They would prefer reading Westland by T.S. Eliot on a free website page rather than buying a book of poems by a new writer. All right, this is the trend today. Now, you can't beat it, because poetry is something associated with being highly eclectic, highly exotic. This is the kind of a feeling we get. So people feel that we will not be able to reach a level in which the poet has written. So why invest 70 rupees or 150 rupees in a book of poetry? So my point is, you said one page of poem, but you know, there is a novel by Vikram Seth, Golden Gate, which runs into 450 pages of just excellent and exquisite poetry. So you shouldn't be saying that one page of poetry. Poetry could be 5 pages, 50 pages, 450 pages. And I come from Calcutta. Our great writer Robi Thakur has written a lot of poems in many number of pages, which are also very popular. So I don't think you can limit the size of a poem. That's not the issue. Issue is the perception among the people that I should not invest too much in something extremely eclectic or exotic. Rather, I should, if I invest 100 rupees or 200 rupees into a book, I should get an interesting story which I can connect with immediately.
It's like still related like but it's about not about writing. It's about as he said that those people are buying non-fiction fiction books and they are like buyers of poems. Like newcomers have also published their books. They're good. In when you read them, you are like you can connect with them. Their words, their emotions. But why still they just take a look and they just take a fiction or non-fiction book? Why is that when they can connect with it?
Yeah, you said this is a trend, this is a passing phase. I think people not buying or investing in books of poems is a passing phase. And I don't personally think that that's going to be permanent. You shouldn't be worried about it as a permanent phase or internationally that's the scenario. I mean, in London, people do buy books of poems. I'm telling you, there is something of a concept called first signed, first copy of a book. That's the first original true copy of a book. Like T.S. Eliot's Wasteland costs around $14,000 and people do buy it. So which means that there is, I mean, T.S. Eliot, I'm talking of a great poet, and there is a lot of market value, investment value into a true copy, okay, like a classic art, okay, it's a collector's copy. So I am saying that this is a this is a passing phase in India now. For the last 7-8 years or 10 years, slowly you will find that things are changing. I do think you will find that things are changing. Any other question or?
How competitive you find this writing community?
Yeah, writing is a competitive business as far as you see, you don't score runs in writing, all right, that's the good part of it. You don't score runs in or take wickets in writing. It's the people's perception which makes you good or bad, all right. But I'm always of the view that to be authentic, you should be, as a writer, concentrating on your own work. And you should not be much worried about what others are thinking about your work. But yes, some good words or some bad words do affect you. Like once a very bad review of Frosted Glass came out on the website, on the internet, and even the reviewer asked me, gave me a freedom whether I would like to get this published. I said, you go ahead with it, because that's your view of the book, that's your view of the situation. So you go ahead with publishing this book. I don't think my book will get destroyed by this kind of a view. So, and it genuinely so happened that it was not destroyed. The book was not destroyed by this view. But I'm not saying that you see, everybody comes from some kind of a background. I come from a background, you come from a background. will look at the same issue in two different ways. So what I look at, just to give you an example, Lolita was by Nabokov was was perceived as a certain kind of a novel at one point in time. Today, people feel that that is one of the greatest masterpieces of the 20th century. So perceptions change. It takes a lot of time to change. And when you are treading upon uncomfortable zones, darker zones of people's minds, which means the writer is exploring himself or herself, you are going to come up with these kind of difficult perceptions among the people. But it happens, it does happen. Like people a lot of time have said to me that why don't you write a romantic novel? I said there are so many people to write a romantic novel. I'm not required to do that. Why don't you write a horror story? Why don't you write an action-packed story? Well, while crime does attract me, but it has to be translated into literary fiction. I mean, I can't do the, you see, even in Netflix today, while Netflix is losing out today, it's because it's too much of concentration on gory crime and horror stories and not literary fiction. Whatever literary fiction it comes up with becomes bestsellers. I'll give you an example, very small example from our pop culture. Breaking Bad, all right? Vince Gilligan is a literary author. Don't forget that Vince Gilligan himself is a literary author. And Vince Gilligan made Breaking Bad for a certain kind of audience and made Better Call Saul for a certain audience. Better Call Saul is not a crime story at all. But if you go to the Netflix website, you will find that it is marketed as a crime story. It is a beautiful story of two brothers growing up together and how different they are in the southern part of the USA. So I'm saying that people also market. Now, if Better Call Saul is not marketed as a crime story, it doesn't get the initial eyeballs. But then, after some time, you do get bored with this gory crime and gory horror stories, or even sweet candy-like romantic stories. So there are people who will write these kind of stories, and there are people who will write different other kind of stories as well. There is space for everybody in this world. Yeah, some will have bigger spaces, some will have smaller spaces. It doesn't matter in the long run. Until and unless you have a space, that's all right.